So I'm curious because you know when I made this blog post on your blog like 2 months ago about the resonance of languages and how I feel different languages. So you live in Paris and you go to the Polyglot bar. Do you ever speak to Italians and French? Like, does it feel different to you to speak to an Italian and French? Because I know if I meet Americans in other parts of the world, and usually Americans are pretty, well, lazy with languages, first of all, and we don't like to speak to each other in another language. But for some reason, I am speaking to another American in Spanish or French. It's really awkward. It's weird. Unless they speak it really well, but if I'm hearing them with a very obvious American accent in Spanish, yo hablo español así, I don't want to speak to them in Spanish. So how is it for you?
Normally you speak French with our Italian friends when other people are around so that everybody understands, but normally it feels very weird to speak another language, especially to Italians. Italians have a bad habit of speaking their own language even if other people are around because it's our native tongue and it's our way of communicating. For example, if I have a friend, a dear friend, I have difficulty speaking in English even if there are other people around. This is one thing. I do remember I had in Norwegian, I was in Norway with a friend of mine, and what happened is that we constantly, like two Norwegian girls and me and a friend of mine, and we were constantly talking in Italian, making comments, because it's for us, it's even if he could speak English, for us it's normal to speak in Italian, to communicate in Italian. We don't adapt. Sometimes we don't adapt to the situation. Norwegian girls, for them, it's pretty normal to speak English to each other so that other people understand because it's like almost like another language. But Italians are attached to their language, so we love our culture and stuff. And it's difficult for us to speak another language. I tried it a couple of times with a dear friend of mine who speaks excellent French, but still it's weird. So I tend to speak just Italian with my friends, unless other people are around, and then we make an effort for a little bit.
For a little bit.
For a little bit, yeah. It's a little bit strange to speak another language with other Italians, unless they speak give a language very well, like English. But it's still weird. Like Italian is like identity. It's with my friends. Speaking Italian is a must. It's a way to communicate. There's no other way around. Even if we could speak other languages, that's the way it is.
How about for you?
I had at university actually there were a few other Brits that we would use different languages, and it was, as Lucas said, there was very high level sort of language. There was a friend of mine who studied on the same degree course as me, and she and I would speak in English, French, Italian, and then that's actually spoken in German since then and Dutch. And it doesn't actually feel weird with her because we did it actually as soon as from when we first met really on the course. So it never felt strange. I haven't got that many English friends with whom I would speak in different languages. My wife, for example, I feel quite strange speaking to her in English. It's quite because our whole relationship is based on Macedonian. So the most natural thing for us is to speak in Macedonian all the time. I mean, even if we're back home in the UK, with friends and family who don't speak Macedonian, it's quite hard for us to have a one-on-one. Like if you're at a dinner table, we would tend to just if everyone else is engaged in conversation and there's just us, we would just revert back to Macedonian straight away. We would not just carry on in English or anything like that. That would never happen. The only times that that would change would be if we're in a situation where it's a conversation between everyone and we're commenting, but we tend not to sort of have that conversation together. We tend to talk to the other people. It's a bit weird. And with my daughter speaking English, obviously I say things. My wife speaks fluent English, and she also thinks in English. My wife will respond in Macedonian, and I will respond in English, or whichever language you're using at the time. And but then my wife and I would just speak in Macedonian. In fact, when my daughter was very small, because she heard me speak only Macedonian at home with my wife, she used to translate from English to Macedonian for me. And so even though she would hear me speaking to my mum in English, and then my mum would answer or she'd ask me something, and then my daughter would look at me and she'd say, "Daddy, she said this," and then she'd say it all to me in Macedonian. It was
Right.
I don't know why, but it was really odd. And she was communicating in English with my mum, and I was communicating in English, but she translated into Macedonian.
Well, you're raising a little interpreter, because usually I was the reluctant interpreter. I hated interpreting, I still do. And here your daughter just doesn't think, she just does it naturally.
I mean, she stopped it after she was about 3. She realised, okay, Daddy does speak English.
That's really funny.
I mean, you know, it was it was a bit weird, but I mean, I can kind of understand it because we were living in the UK, and okay, she heard me speaking English a lot,
Yeah.
but with her on my own, I spoke in French, and then with my wife in Macedonian. So with her, I didn't speak English while we were, you know, mainly in the UK, and maybe for that reason, I don't know. But then from the age of 3, she had it really sorted in her head. Okay, these are the languages, and this is when I use them.
That's funny.